Good evening, everyone. Slide 1. It is 5:30 on Thursday, October 20th, 2022, and we will now begin this recorded session. Welcome, everyone, to the Florida Department of Transportation's public meeting for the State Road 5 Federal Highway Resurfacing, Restoration, and Rehabilitation Project in the city of Lake Worth Beach. I am Leslie Wetherell, the DOT project manager for this project. Next slide, please. Slide 2, agenda. We will start this meeting by briefly reviewing the public meeting agenda. As you can see on the screen, introductions, meeting format, non-discrimination policy, rules of engagement, project overview, proposed design plans, maintenance of traffic, questions and answers, and contact information. Next slide, please. Slide 3, introductions. Next slide, please. As mentioned, my name is Leslie Wetherell, and I am the project manager for DOT. Tonight, we also have Jagan Katkuri, the consultant engineer of record and project manager with Constructive Engineering, Inc., and Justina Hinklin, who is the community outreach specialist moderating tonight's meeting. Now we will start our formal presentation. At the end of the formal presentation, we will have a questions and answers session. At this time, we invite any elected officials that are attending to speak. Please select the raised hand feature and we will unmute you. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Are there any elected officials on the call? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide, please. Slide 5, meeting format. I will now turn it over to Justina Hinklin to review our meeting format.
Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate it. As Leslie said, my name is Justina Hinklin. And before we start the presentation, I'd just like to share a few items regarding the meeting format. We're using the GoToMeeting platform for this meeting. There's no cost to the public to log in or dial in to participate in this meeting. On your computer or device screen, you should see something that looks like what is depicted in the upper right-hand corner. To listen to the meeting, your computer or device speakers are selected by default. If you prefer to listen by phone, please select telephone. In the audio pane of the control panel, and a dial-in using the information which is displayed. Next slide, please. Slide 7. If you dialed in today via telephone and arranged for a paper copy of the presentation, each presenter will announce the page number of the slide being shown. The presenter is also available on the project webpage the presentation will be available on our project webpage, which is provided on the screen. It's fdot.cc/state-5-federal-highway. Next slide, please. Slide 8. If you happen to experience any technical issues during this meeting, you can call technical helpline at 833-851-8340, or you may type the issue in the question box on the control panel in order to report it. Staff will do their best to assist you. Next slide, please. Slide 9. Public notice for this public meeting included information on how to access the meeting was provided in letters via the U.S. Postal Service to property owners and tenants in the project area, on social media feeds, on the District 4 website, and the Florida Administrative Register. Next slide, please. Slide 10. We will now go over the non-discrimination policy. Slide 11. The Florida Department of Transportation complies with various non-discrimination laws and regulations, including the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Public participation is solicited without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. If you would like to contact the local contact for District 4 office, the Title VI coordinator is Ms. Sharon Sang-Hyen. The address there is 3400 West Commercial Boulevard. That is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33309. Phone number that she can be reached at is 954-777-4190. She can also be reached via email at sharon.singhayen@dot.state.fl.us. For the state contact, the interim Title VI coordinator and EOO Civil Rights Manager is Mr. Aldrin Sanders. That address is 605 Swaney Street, MS 65. That's in Tallahassee, Florida, 32399 is the zip code. And the number that he can be reached at is 350-414-4764. Aldrin's email is aldrin.sanders@dot.state.fl.us. Next slide, please. Slide 12, we will now go over the rules of engagement. Slide 13, this public meeting is being recorded. If you experience technical difficulties, you may call the helpline at 833-851-8340 so that a member of our technical support team may assist you. All attendees will remain muted throughout the meeting, except for the open discussion period where you can do question and answer. To provide a comment during the question and answer portion, please use the raise hand feature on your GoToWebinar panel. Once your microphone is unmuted, please provide your full name and then your comment. Your microphone will remain unmuted until the comment has been fully addressed. Attendees are also welcome to submit any questions and comments using the platform's question panel at any time, and a member of the team will respond during our question and answer period. Next slide, please. Slide 14, we will have the project overview by Mr. Jagan Kat-Curry.
Thank you, Justina. Slide 15. The project is located in city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida. Shown in red on the map are the project limits where the proposed improvements will be made on Federal Highway. Project scope. Slide 16, project scope. Repaving the existing right-of-way roadway, installing pedestrian countdown signal features at signalized intersections, installing 2 mid-block crosswalks, one each at 8th Avenue South and 3rd Avenue North, raising the intersection at 7th Avenue South, raising the crosswalk between 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North, reconstructing substandard sidewalk curb ramps, adding buffered bike lane from 2nd Avenue North to 6th Avenue North, upgrading lighting to better illuminate pedestrian crosswalks at 6th Avenue South, 2nd Avenue North, and the existing and proposed mid-block crosswalks, upgrading signing and pavement markings. Next slide, please. Slide 17. The project is anticipated to begin in spring of 2024 and be completed by late 2025. It is estimated to cost $1.5 million. Next slide, please. Slide 8. We will go over some of the details on the project. Slide 19. From the beginning of the project to Lake Avenue, existing lanes will be resurfaced and shared lane markings will be added for bicyclists to share the travel lanes. Next slide, please. Slide 20. From Lucerne Avenue to 2nd Avenue North, existing 3 lanes will be resurfaced and shared lane markings will be added to share the travel lanes. Next slide, please. Slide 21. From 2nd Avenue North to end of the project, existing 3 lanes will be resurfaced and restriped to remove the center turn lane, add and replace with a 6-foot buffered bike lane on both sides. Next slide, please. Slide 22. In partnership with the City of Lake Worth Beach, the FDOT has prioritized solutions for speeding concerns within the project limits. In an effort to reduce travel speeds along this corridor, we are introducing few speed management techniques that are appropriate for this corridor. An additional improvement will be a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour within the project limits. Also, the project is proposing to implement a raised intersection at 7th Avenue South as depicted in the graphic. Next slide, please. Slide 23. We are also adding a raised crosswalk at the existing signalized pedestrian crossing between 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North. Next slide, please. Slide 24. Lighting and signalization improvements. Upgrading lighting to better illuminate pedestrian crosswalks at 6th Avenue South, 2nd Avenue North, and existing and proposed mid-block crosswalks. We will be using the decorative light poles that exist along the corridor. Next slide, please. Slide 25. We will explain how we will address maintenance of traffic during construction. Slide 26. Maintenance of traffic. Daytime and nighttime work will be performed within the project limits. Flagging operations will be used to direct one lane of traffic at a time. Temporary detours will be implemented during construction of raised intersection and raised crosswalks. Access to businesses and residences will be maintained at all times. Daytime work hours 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. from 10th Avenue South to 2nd Avenue South and from 2nd Avenue North to 6th Avenue North, excluding the 2nd Avenue North signal. Nighttime work hours 10 p.m. to 8 p.m. from 2nd Avenue South to 2nd Avenue North, including 2nd Avenue North signal. In coordination with the city, the department has designated work hours in consideration of current ordinances and the surrounding community. Next slide, please. During construction of the raised intersection at Federal Highway and 7th Avenue South, the contractor may use a temporary detour directing motorists traveling on Federal Highway to South End Street via 6th Avenue South and 8th Avenue South, as shown in the graphic. Temporary detour signage will be in place for motorists to safely navigate through the area. This detour will allow the contractor to construct these proposed improvements in a safe and timely manner. Next slide, please. Slide 28. During construction of the raised crosswalk on Federal Highway between 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North, the contractor may use a temporary detour directing motorists traveling northbound on Federal Highway to North End Street via 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North. Motorists traveling southbound on Federal Highway will be directed to North Ocean Breeze using 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North, as shown in the graphic here. This detour will allow the contractor to construct these proposed improvements in a safe and timely manner. Next slide, please. Justina, thank you.
So as you can see, our safety message is depicted on the screen. Florida law requires you to move over a lane when you can safely do so. For stop law enforcement, emergency, sanitation, utility service vehicles, and tow trucks or wreckers. When you fail to move over, you put yourself and others at risk. You could crash into a vehicle or worker. So please move over or slow down for emergency lights. Next slide, please. Slide 30. We will now go into our question and answer period. slide 31. As you can see on your screen, there are options for your sound and also options for posting your question. So at this moment, we'll go ahead and start this portion of our meeting. All comments and questions submitted through these options are part of a public record for this virtual meeting. To provide a comment, please submit questions, comments using the GoToWebinar question panel, or request to speak by clicking on the raise hand feature. At this time, I would like to take the time to acknowledge any elected officials who may be in attendance that were not in attendance when we began our meeting. You can identify yourself by using the raised hand icon, and we will unmute you so you can introduce yourself, or you can type into the question panel and we will introduce you that way. I do see that we have a raised hand, or we did have a raised hand. I do see that was taken off. So I don't believe that we have any elected officials in attendance tonight. If there is, you can type into the question panel and we will acknowledge you during the meeting. But we'll go ahead and open up the floor for our question and answer period. Anyone who has a question may use the raise hand feature at this time, or you can type your question in for us.
Justina, there are 2 questions on the chat window.
Thank you, Jagan. And we also have some raised hands as well. I'm going to unmute first, and then I will go over to the questions that we have in the question panel. Our first question is from Mr. Sam Goodstein. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Mr. Goodstein. On our side, it is showing that you have yourself muted. So if you can unmute, you should be able to speak. Okay, you are now unmuted.
My questions are first question regarding the raised intersection. The raised intersection was described as being done in partnership with Lake Worth. Is that a monetary partnership? What does that consist of?
Hi, Mr. Goodstein. Thank you for your question tonight. As I understand your question is about the partnership of the raised intersection, and
Yes.
if there's any monetary contribution from the city related to the raised intersection. And the answer to that is no. The city is not contributing directly to the raised intersection. The partnership is the conversation with the city and their team that they support and would like the department to do this improvement. So we have been coordinating that support with them.
And that's with the city government. Is that a citizen initiative, or is that the city staff?
That's city staff, as well as the commission has endorsed it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Just double checking. I thought I saw another hand earlier. I'm going to go over to our question panel. Again, you can continue to use the raised hand option if you would like to speak and ask a question. So our first question that we have in our chat box is from Mr. Richard Stowe. And his question is, how much is the raised intersection? I'm not sure if you're talking about a monetary value, but the question does read, how much is the raised intersection?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Stowe. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. However, per our correspondence previously, you indicated that you might come to the meeting on Tuesday night. And if you plan on attending Tuesday night, I can certainly bring that information with me to that meeting to share with you at that time. If that's acceptable to you, if you don't mind responding into the chat box, and I'd be happy to have that information with me on Tuesday night.
Thank you, Leslie. Mr. Stowe, we'll wait. If you have anything additional, I'm going to go to the next question. And so he did acknowledge and say that will be fine, Leslie.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stowe.
So our next question is from Miss Tammy Panza. And the question is, how long is this going to take?
Hi, Tammy. Thank you for joining us tonight. We expect the project should take between a year and a year and a half. We're not at the point yet of knowing the exact number of days, so it is a ballpark estimate at this time. However, as we get closer to the project going to construction, we'll have a better handle on that exact time frame. And the other thing I did want to add to all of the attendees tonight is similar to the meeting that we're having right now during the design phase. There will be a separate meeting before the project goes to construction to let everyone along the corridor know, whether you're a resident or a business owner or a city team member, that the job is getting ready to start construction. So I did want to alleviate any concerns that anybody might have on the call about that. Again, there will be a separate, what we call a construction open house, where we've already hired the contractor and the CEI team, and they'll be there to talk to you about when the construction will start, et cetera. Hopefully I was able to answer your question, Tammy.
She has an additional question, Leslie, and her
Great.
next question is, there is some flooding in the area. Are your plans going to account for remediation of any flood areas or stop future flooding?
We have been talking to the city about areas in question, and our drainage office has been coordinating minor cleanouts, if you will, along the corridor. We are also making sure that any of the new improvements that we install, such as the raised intersection, addresses the drainage in that area.
Thank you. We have another raised hand by Mr. Stowe. Mr. Stowe, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so that you will be able to speak your question. It shows that you are self-muted. If you would like to go ahead and unmute yourself, we will allow you to speak. Mr. Stowe, you are now unmuted if you would like to speak. Okay, I'm not sure if you have stepped away. We will go back to the question panel. If you do still have a question, I will come back and acknowledge you if you would like to speak a question. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you at this time and go to our next question in our question panel. So Leslie, you have another question from Ms. Panza, and her next question is, there are several one-way streets in the area. Are road closures going to allow for adequate travel on the one-way streets? That's part of her question. Then the second part of her question is, are you going to close only certain streets at a time?
Okay, great question. So and Justina, can you please go back to the slide that shows the detours? It was in our MOT section. Slide number.
Did you want 27?
27.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you. So this slide 27, and the next slide 28, show the two areas in question that have the temporary detours. And you can see that at this location, it's two-way streets, so not one-way streets. And we did coordinate this with the city, since these are city streets, and to make sure that the city street had the ability to support the detour. And the next street, the next slide, please, slide 28. This one, they are the one-way streets, as you mentioned, but again, we coordinated that with the city to ensure that it was appropriate to utilize those streets for the detour. And I think, Justina, there was a second part to the question. Could you please repeat it?
Yes, the second part of the question is, are you going to close only certain streets at a time? I guess she's asking about the sequences of the closures.
Okay, so the two areas in question shown on these two slides, this one that we've got the screen on and slide 27 above, are the only locations where the detours will occur. There will be daytime lane closures throughout the life of the project so that the construction team can mill and resurface the roadway. And Justina, if you could go back to slide, I believe 26 on the MOT slide. So what will happen is the contractor team will use flag people to help maintain traffic when they have to close one lane down so that they can maintain one lane during the life of the construction.
Thank you, Leslie.
Hopefully I was able to answer that question.
Okay, I do see that Mr. Stowe has his hand up again. We also have questions in the question panel for Mr. Stowe. So I will go ahead and unmute you. And I don't know if you want to ask the questions that were already posted, but we'll monitor whether it's being asked or not. It does show that you're self-muted. So if you would like to go ahead and attempt to unmute yourself, you were just unmuted. You are now unmuted. Mr. Stowe, if you're speaking, we are not able to hear you at this time.
Excuse me.
Okay, I do see that you have muted yourself again. You are now unmuted if you would like to speak. We're still unable to hear you if you are speaking, Mr. Stowe. I'm going to go ahead and mute you, but I will go to the questions that I see that you've posted in our question panel. And if you would like, you can give us an update on whether or not everything that you were inquiring about has been answered or not via the question panel, but I'll go ahead and begin to read the questions that you have posted. Leslie, Mr. Stowe's next question is in regards to Jagan. He would like to know who Jagan is, to identify who Jagan is and why he was a part of tonight's presentation.
Sure, Justina, can you go back to slide number 4? Oh, perfect, thank you. So Mr. Stowe, Mr. Cat Curry is our consultant project manager and also the engineer of record that is on this project. So the department has hired Mr. Cat Curry to do the plans and production of the plans and engineering for this project. So that's why I asked him to participate in tonight's meeting, because he has the technical background for the project as well as myself.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Leslie. I was just looking to see if we had any other unanswered questions for Mr. Stowe. It seems that that was the last question that he had in the chat. Again, Mr. Stowe, I'm not sure if you're having technical difficulties with being able to speak. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next question that is in the chat. If you have additional questions, if you would like to type them in, we will definitely read them out and answer your questions via that option. The next question that we have is from Ms. Tammy Panza. Her next question is, are there going to be any bump outs, raised areas, or other things that would impede traffic?
Hi again, Tammy. Thank you for your question. So while we are not doing any bump outs as asked in the question, however, as noted in the presentation, we are doing the raised intersection at 7th Avenue South, and we are also doing a raised crosswalk at between 4th and 5th Avenues North, where there's an existing pedestrian signal today. And those are the two slides that show that. And the objective behind doing these improvements, again, in partnership with the city, is to assist with speed management along the corridor.
Thank you, Leslie. Next question that we have is from Mr. Sam Goldstein. The question is, if the city requests a mini roundabout instead of raised intersection, when must they do so by within this planning. And I'm assuming that by that, he's just asking if there's a possibility for it to be changed, I guess, from a mini roundabout, from a raised intersection to a mini roundabout if it's proposed by the city.
Great. Thank you for the question, Mr. Goldstein. So the city and the TPA did ask the department to look into mini roundabouts along this corridor. And the department did look at that information and determine that the appropriate speed management technique along this corridor is what we're showing in the presentation, which is the raised intersection and the raised crosswalk.
Thank you, Leslie. I see that Mr. Goldstein also has the raised hand featured. I'm going to go ahead and attempt to unmute you at this time, Mr. Goldstein. I don't know if your question was already answered, but we will unmute you so we can acknowledge whether or not you have an additional question. Mr. Goldstein, you are now unmuted if you would like to speak.
Thank you very much, and let me acknowledge the professionalism of this presentation. If the city, does the city still have the option to request a mini roundabout? I understand that a study was done, but the determination of that, is it final? Has it been determined by FDOT? What is the city's role in that?
Thank you for the follow-up question. So the department has made the final determination that mini roundabouts are not the appropriate speed management technique for this corridor. Hence why we're showing you the raised intersection and the raised crosswalk, which are supported by city staff and the city commission.
And that FDOT determination is final. Is there a process for appealing that, for reevaluation? What is the, I'm not familiar with the staging process of the.
Sure. So the department's offices that are responsible for the design and operations of the corridor has looked at the request previously and determined that it is not the appropriate speed management technique for the corridor. So the decision has been made to move forward with the raised intersection and the raised crosswalk.
Are there other versions of horizontal deflection that would be considered appropriate for this corridor?
The ones that we're showing in the presentation are essentially the ones that are available to us in this corridor that we are implementing.
So there's no possibility of doing a narrowing. I understand this is a RRR project, but there's no possibility of via striping doing a road narrowing or elimination of the middle turn lane?
So actually, if we could go back to the typical sections, please, Justina, I believe it's page 20. Let me see, 21, please. So, okay, well, actually, that's a good idea, Justina. Let's start with 19. Okay, so Mr. Goldstein, there's three typical sections along this corridor. So if we could go back to the first typical, David. So the section that goes from 10th Avenue South up to Lake Avenue is, as you can see on the screen, it's 24 feet in width and has the 2 lanes and shared bike lanes. We are required to maintain 12-foot lanes in this section. We unfortunately don't have any availability to widen the roadway because we are constrained within the footprint of the right-of-way. If we could go to the next slide, please. This section is, as you can see on the map, from Lucerne to 2nd Avenue North. It is a 3-lane section where there is a center turn lane that feeds into the signal at 2nd Avenue North. And we will maintain the 2 lanes on either side with the shared bike lane markings with the center turn lane. And then I'd like to show you the third typical section. The next slide, please. This is the section on the northern end of the project, which goes from 2nd Avenue North to 6th Avenue North. And today, this does have the center turn lane and the 2 travel lanes. And as a result of feedback we received from both citizens and the city staff, as well as the commission, we looked at this typical section and determined that we can remove the center turn lane and add the buffered bike lanes within these limits. So we're still maintaining 2 lanes of traffic. Vehicles can still turn left from the through lanes, just like they do in the typical section to the south. and the typical section to the north outside of these project limits. And we were able to add in the 6-foot buffered bike lanes in this section.
And I noticed the lanes are 11 feet on this section. Would it be
Correct.
possible to narrow the areas where they were 12 to 11?
Unfortunately, we're not able to narrow the lanes. And if you could go back to typical section 1, please. Because we are constrained in that typical section with right-of-way without any bike lanes adjacent to it, we are not able to reduce the lane widths from 12 feet. We are required to maintain the 12-foot lanes in that typical section.
And I noticed this is the setup where we have cars and bikes having the same right to the road.
Correct.
Will there be stab-in signage, whatever you call the pole signage, indicating that also, as well as the striping on the road, which I think nobody except the bicyclists understand?
Yes, sir. There will be signage as well as the striping, and we just don't show the signage in the typical section. But there
Got
is
it.
standard signage along the corridor that indicates the roadway is to be shared.
And you had indicated that that the decision about the not to have that the raised bed was the optimal case for this area, and that was a final determination by FDOT. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe I answered that previously, but just to reiterate, yes.
I just wanted to make sure, because my next question is the placement of a raised bed at that intersection finalized, or is that something which the city may have further input into in partnership with FDOT?
Great question, or great follow-up question. So the city did ask us to look into this specifically. So this is the solution that we are proposing for speed management techniques along the corridor.
But the city may still have input into whether or not that is the final determination. That is your offer as a speed control solution.
That is the speed management technique that is appropriate for the corridor. And like I said, the city did support the department looking into speed management techniques along the corridor.
I understand that, but if the city came back and said we wanted to do something else, would that be still within the possibility within the planning process?
So Mr. Goldstein, really the only other else in lieu of a speed table is to not do it. And if the city did not want to do it, we could have those further discussions. But there really isn't anything else that can be done in lieu of the raised intersection for speed management techniques along this corridor.
But it is a speed management technique done at the request of the city and not a constraint within the project, the RRR project necessarily?
Well, the department feels it is appropriate to install. So if the city asked us to remove it, we would have further discussions with them about whether or not that is in fact the best approach to handle speed management along the corridor. The city did raise to us the concern about the speed limit. We mentioned earlier that we are reducing the speed limit as a result. So we're hopeful that that will help. But we believe by adding these speed management techniques that it will create this the reduction in speed that the city is looking for.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your questions. Really appreciate your attendance tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Stowe, I see that you still have the raised hand icon toggled. I'm going to attempt again to unmute you at this time. You are unmuted if you would like to speak, Mr. Stowe. I did see you acknowledge in the chat earlier that you are having technical issues. I do apologize that you're not able to speak at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you, and I'm going to go to the next question that is in our question panel. Our next question is from Charlene Raphael. The question is, several FDOT projects are in various phases. The areas that she identifies, Leslie, are Federal Highway, Dixie Highway, 10th Avenue and 95 overpass. The question is there a schedule available for when each of these projects begin and end? Will there be an overlap of construction projects, or just a continuum of the projects? If it is the latter, which is the continuum, how many years will these projects take from beginning to end?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, I don't have those answers with me tonight, but if you're willing to provide us your name and contact info into the chat, we're happy to follow up with you with that information.
Okay, so Ms. Raphael, we do have the question that you have documented. As Leslie said, if you provide your contact information, she will be able to follow up with you. We have it documented, so we will be able to follow up once she obtains that information. Mr. Stowe, I do see that you have several comments that are in the chat. I don't see any questions at this time. I do want to remind you that your comments will be a part of the public record for this project. So they are being recorded and they will be a part of the summary report for the department, but I don't see any additional questions from you. So I'm going to go to our next question that we have in the question panel. First question that we have from Ms. Brittany is, I have a residence along the corridor. Will I have access to my driveway?
Great question. And Justina, if I could ask you to go to the MOT slide, please. The first one. Let me look here which slide it is. Oh, perfect. Thank you, David. If you look at the fourth bullet on there, we do maintain access to businesses and residences during the life of the project. Before I mentioned that when the job gets ready to go to construction, there will be another open house where the contractor and the CEI team, and the CEI team is the engineering team that handles the administration of the contractor when it's in construction. They're going to have that open house meeting, and that's the time that they'll talk to you about, again, the length of the project. They'll give you their contact information, things like that, so that during the life of the project, if it's in construction, if you have any questions about the construction, you can call them. But they will be maintaining your access to your business and residences. If there are times where they need to work with you on the access to your, they'll be out there talking to you about it during the life of the construction.
Thank you. Ms. Raphael, I just want to acknowledge that we did receive your email. It is recorded, so we will be able to follow up with you following this meeting. Next question that we have is also from Brittany. That question is, can you explain the maintenance of traffic again, please?
Sure. David, would you mind going back to the MOT slide again? So essentially, the maintenance of traffic is there's what I like to refer to as the bookends of the project, which will be done during daytime work. And that will be there. You can see the daytime work will be done from 10th Avenue South to 2nd Avenue South. So the bottom half of our project, south of Lake and Lucerne. And then on the northern end of the project from 2nd Avenue North to 6th Avenue North, it will also be during the day. And that will be done with daytime lane closures, meaning one lane will be closed and one lane will be maintained with a flag person so that we can maintain traffic during that time. And then there will be nighttime work, but that will be limited between 2nd Avenue South and 2nd Avenue North. And again, they will maintain one lane of traffic with flaggers. In addition, there are the two nominal detours that we have in order to install the raised crosswalk, thank you, David, and the raised intersection. And when those detours are in place, the project will have signage redirecting people around the detour. Of course, if you're local and you live in the area, you probably know all the top secret ways to get around the detour and may or may not use the same detour we've outlined. Hopefully I was able to answer the maintenance of traffic question.
Thank you, Leslie. I do not recall if I did or did not read this question, but there was a question in regards to how long the project is going to take from Ms. Tammy Panza.
Okay, Thank you, Tammy, for your question. The project is expected to last between a year and a year and a half. We're not quite sure of the exact time frame yet, as that hasn't been determined, but it should be between a year and a half. And again, when the CEI and the contractor have that open house for beginning construction, they will have a finite time on how long they expect it to take.
Thank you. Our next question is from Brittany. The question is, can you explain why the department is doing lighting? She references slide 24.
Okay, great question. Get to slide 24. Great question. So as you can see on the left side of the screen, the department has a Target Zero initiative to improve safety along the state highway system. And the initiative specifically includes addressing signalized crossings where pedestrians are crossing. So the lighting that we are installing as a part of this project is to enhance the lighting that's already there at those specific locations along the corridor. So again, we have 6th Avenue South and 2nd Avenue North that are both signalized locations where we'll be enhancing the lighting. And as noted in the screenshot there, we will be enhancing the lighting with the decorative features that are similar to what's out there today. And the picture shown there is one of the 2 styles of decorative lighting that is along the corridor. In addition, we'll be enhancing the lighting at the 2 new proposed mid-block crossings, as well as the existing mid-block crossing. So it's a statewide initiative to improve safety for pedestrians at signalized locations, which is why we're improving the lighting. Great question.
And Leslie, I just wanted to follow up with your reference to the decorative lighting. Are you referring to existing lighting that's already on the corridor and not proposed, right?
So there is existing decorative lighting along the corridor, and the new lighting that is being proposed related to this lighting for the pedestrian initiative is also decorative lighting.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Just want to remind everyone that you have 2 options to ask questions and make comments tonight. One of the options is using the raised hand feature, and then you also have the option of using the questions panel to type a question in for us to read aloud tonight. The next question that we have is from Brittany, and the question reads, I walk this corridor daily. Will the sidewalks be open?
Thanks, Brittany, for your question. As you mentioned, there are sidewalks along the corridor. And yes, sidewalks, pedestrian ability to use the sidewalks will be available during the life of the construction. There will be times when only one side of the roadway will be open for sidewalk usage due to the ongoing construction. However, there will be pedestrian connectivity throughout the corridor during the life of the project. And what will happen is our maintenance of traffic will explicitly indicate where you need to cross, if you need to cross from one side of the street to the other, to maintain that safe passage for you as a pedestrian.
Thank you. We have a final question from Brittany. Brittany's question reads, I noticed a difference on the typical sections with the bike lanes. Can you explain?
Great question. Can we go back to those typical sections, David? Let's start with typical section 1, please. Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is the typical section from the southern end of the job, which is 10th Avenue South, all the way up to Lake Avenue. And in this typical section, we have 2 lanes. We have 2 12-foot lanes to maintain the vehicular traffic as well as the bicyclist traffic. So the bikes and the vehicles share the road. The bike symbols that you see there above the arrows are referred to as sharrows. So this is the typical section. So bikes and vehicles share the road for this section of the corridor. And if we could go to the next section, please. The next section is from Lucerne Avenue up to 2nd Avenue North. And you'll notice we're not doing any work between Lake and Lucerne. A different project is doing that work, a separate project from ours. So we're exempting out those limits between Lake and Lucerne for this project. So going up to Lucerne Avenue North, Lucerne Avenue to 2nd Avenue North, we have the 3-lane section with 2 lanes on either side that also have the bike lane shared terminology, because the vehicles and the bicyclists will be sharing the road in that typical section. And then if we could go to the next one, please. The third typical section is, today this is a 3-lane section with 2 lanes and a center turn lane, and we will be modifying it to reflect the 2 lanes that you see on the screen and adding buffered bike lanes on either side. So we're not widening the pavement, we're just restriping it to reflect 2 lanes of traffic and buffered bike lanes on either side. And hopefully that answers your question, Brittany.
Want to acknowledge at this time that we do have several comments that were placed into the question panel. I just wanted to remind all attendees who made comments. I have comments from Ms. Tammy Panza and Mr. Richard Stowe, that your comments are going to be a part of the recorded record for this meeting, and they will also be furnished in any reports that are published as a part of this project. So your comments will be included. Don't see any additional questions at this time. I want to remind everyone that you have the option to use the raised hand feature, and you also have the option to type questions into the question panel. We have gotten contact information from Ms. Raphael to be able to follow up to the question that she asked. We did just get an additional question in. That question reads, I live off of Federal Highway at 4th Avenue. So it sounds like you're taking out the turn lane. So the question is, are we going to remove the turn lane? That is the question.
So just to confirm the location, it sounds like 4th Avenue North, so north of Lake and Lucerne. Yes, we are removing the center turn lane and restriping to 2 lanes with the buffered bike lane. Left turn lanes will still be permitted from the through lane, similar to the southern typical section and the northern typical section. There will not be a barrier between the 2 lanes. It will just be striped. So again, similar to the typical section to the south and to the north.
Yes, I have a question about the crosswalk between 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North, which is is that crosswalk a city feature, a FDOT feature? I
found this on the web for feature FDOT feature. Check it out.
I have lost my audio view, I think.
Mr. Goldstein, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. My question was about the crosswalk between 4th and 5th Avenue North, and whether that was a crosswalk which was there by FDOT design, and whether or not that needs to be retained. Some of the practical usage of it has changed due to fencing and situations that are outside the scope of your project, or outside of the scope of it on private land.
Thank you for your question. So at this time, the existing pedestrian mid-block crossing is to remain in the project. We did receive a request prior to this meeting asking a similar question that you had, and our traffic operations office is looking into the inquiry. I don't have a status update on what that will entail, as they just received the inquiry. So it will, as we sit here and talk today, it is to remain.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank
I'm
you.
glad to hear you're looking into that, because there is where when I was growing up, there was no fence. There is now an 8-foot chain link fence keeping the kids from crossing there. So
Thank you for the background. I appreciate it.
And I have one other question, which may be general and outside the scope of the project, but do the bike lanes past 10th Avenue North, do the bike lanes continue? Is there a plan for them to continue? If you put in the northern bike lanes, I guess my question is, how far can they go in the future? And is that something that you are able to determine?
So the bike lanes are being added to that section due to the ability to remove the center turn lane. And we did look at traffic numbers for the center turn lane. I see there's another question about that in the chat. We did, to alleviate any concerns that question had, we did look at traffic numbers to ensure removing that center turn lane would not create an operational issue. But Mr. Goldstein, to answer your question, the buffered bike lanes are able to exist there because we could remove the center turn lane and we still had available pavement in that area within the footprint of the right-of-way. To the north, I don't know too much about what's going on to the north, I'll be honest, since I'm not managing that project. But I believe the typical section to the north is fairly consistent with just 2 lanes in either direction for the most part. And because they have limited right-of-way, they may or may not be able to add bike lanes along that corridor. But that will be for that design team to determine what they can and can't do within the footprint of that corridor.
And does that project have is it in existence? What stage is it at?
I believe it's in the initial design phases at this time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie, we have a follow-up question to the last. So I'm going to repeat the last question. You've already answered it, but just so that you can have perspective on the follow-up. The initial question that was asked that you already asked, that you answered, I'm sorry, was with regards to Federal Highway and 4th Avenue. So the follow-up question to that was whether or not it's going to create an issue for Sacred Heart School, because it's in the area, and the comment is that it may create a huge backup since there's no turn lane there.
So again, we did look at the traffic numbers in the area where the turn lane is before we made the decision to remove the center turn lane to go to the typical section that is shown. So we did look into the traffic numbers.
And then there's additional comment, again, follow up to that question. The comment is that the center turn lane is necessary because of school drop off and specifically to Sacred Heart. And the comment is regarding the crosswalk between 4th and 5th is also used by the children, I guess, to cross the street. And she is referencing that they use that crosswalk daily, she and her children.
We appreciate your feedback on the crosswalk. Thank you. Regarding the turn lane, again, we did look at traffic numbers on that to determine that it would not create an operational issue along the corridor.
Mr. Goldstein, I'm not sure if you have an additional question or if that's the raised hand from earlier.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was complete.
Okay, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to go ahead and use that feature again. Just checking to see if we have any additional questions in our question panel. And again, Leslie, there are several comments regarding Sacred Heart. And as you've already responded, that FDOT has already looked at that information for what the best option is. That is all that I have in the question panel at this time. I do not see any other raised hands at this time. So we're going to go ahead and close out our meeting for this evening. We are now on slide 32. So this concludes our question and answer portion of the meeting. If your question was not responded to during the open discussion that we had for question and answer, a response will be provided at a later date. All comments and questions submitted through these options are part of the public record, as stated earlier, and they will be considered by the department during project decision making. The recording of this meeting will be linked to the recording of this meeting will be linked to a follow-up email, and all persons having registered for the meeting will receive this recording. A public comment period will remain open to accommodate the public to view the meeting video after the live event. Your comments must be received by November 4th in order to be included in our summary for this meeting. Slide 33, contact information. Slide 34. If you have any questions or comments about this project, please contact the FDOT project manager, Ms. Leslie Wetherell. Her email is leslie.wetherell@dot.state.fl.us. To mail Leslie, you can mail at 3400 West Commercial Boulevard. That is Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33309. To call her, you can dial 954-777-4438 or toll free at 866-336-8435, and her extension is 4438. Next slide, please. We would like to thank everyone for attending today's meeting for the State Road 5 Federal Highway Resurfacing, Restoration, and Rehabilitation Project. Just want to remind everyone that we will be having an in-person meeting. Our in-person meeting will be held, Our in-person meeting will be held next Tuesday, October 25th. It is going to be from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The location of that meeting is the Compass Community Center, Alfred Fendeka Ballroom, which is located at 201 North Dixie Highway, Lake Worth Beach, Florida, 33460. We hope you have a great evening, and we'd like to thank you again for joining our virtual public meeting for the State Road 5 Federal Highway Project.